Before the Obot clan rose, one man stood between survival and extinction. His name was Obot, a leader, a dreamer, a man who dared to unite wandering clans through blood, betrayal, and sacrifice. But every dream carries a price, and Obot's dream will demand everything. This is not just a story, it is the birth of a people, the saga of Obot. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell button for more African folktales.
Whispers from the Creeks.
The sun has grown merciless over the rolling hills of Ibom. Once fertile fields lay cracked, their veins split open like the backs of tired elders. The yam barns that had always overflown after harvest now stood hollow, their wooden frames echoing with the sound of emptiness. Hunger crept into every compound, its presence heavier than the smoke that drifted from dying hearts. Among the people, murmurs rose like restless birds. Mothers could no longer count their children with promise of food. Hunters returned with empty hands, their traps useless as the game itself seemed to have fled. The streams thinned into sluggish trickles, and even the palm groves bore fewer fruits. It was as though the land itself has turned its back on its people. In this time of despair, Obot, a man not yet old but forged by hardship, began to rise in the eyes of many. He was broad-shouldered, his hands calloused from the soil, his voice steady even in moments of doubt. Though he was not born of the highest lineage, his courage and sense of duty gave weight to his words. He was the one who urged the youth to keep their heads high, the one who reminded the elders that no people endured without sacrifice. At the gathering grounds beneath the giant Ukang tree, the elders and families assembled. Their voices clashed in heated debate. Shall we leave the land of our fathers? Some asked, their pride choking their reason. Others, gaunt with hunger, argued, what honor is there in death if the children of Ibibio do not live to sing tomorrow? It was Obot who spoke with calm but unyielding conviction. Our ancestors carved paths through the forest and stone to give us life. If this land had turned against us, then we must find a new earth where our children will eat and where our names will not vanish into silence. His words settled over the assembly like an evening dew. For the first time in moons, eyes lifted with a faint glimmer of hope. Even as the shadows of hunger still lingered, the thought of leaving the ancestral soil pierced their hearts with pain. But the seed of migration had been planted. The next gathering came swiftly, for hunger left no room for delay. Under the same Ukang tree, the people of Ibom settled once more. The great drum was beating thrice, summoning men and women, old and young, to listen and be heard. Their voices carried weight of generations, torn between loyalty to their soil and the instinct to survive. Elder Nkanga, whose hair was as white as ash, leaned on his staff and spoke first. We have tilled this land since the days when the first yams sprouted from the earth. Our fathers are buried here. Our mothers' songs still linger in the air. Shall we now abandon them to wander like strangers? His voice trembled, not with weakness, but with the fear of forgetting. From the crowd, murmurs rose. Some nodded in agreement, clinging to the soil as though it were their very skin. But others, gaunt and weary, muttered in discontent. Then Akpanodo, a hunter whose rib pressed against his chest like caged bones, lifted his hands. Elder, what use are graves if the living cannot endure? The earth is empty. Our bows find no prey. Must we sit here and starve until our children's voices fall silent? The crowd rumbled, torn between two truths. At last, Obot stepped forward. He spoke not loudly, but every syllable carried weight. Our ancestors will not abandon us if we carry them within. Their names are not bound to this soil alone, but live in our blood. To live is not to forsake them. It is to honor them by surviving. If a tree's roots find no water, does it not seek another place to grow? We too must journey, for the bloodline of Ibibio must not die here. A silence followed, heavy as the Harmattan haze. The people looked upon Obot and saw in him not only a man, but the voice of a path forward. Slowly, heads began to bow in reluctant acceptance. That night, in quiet compounds, families whispered of journey into unknown forests. Mothers wept softly as they gathered the little they had, clutching charms and heirlooms. Fathers sharpened spear, not for hunting, but for the danger of migration. Children listened wide-eyed, sensing that the world they knew was about to be left behind. The decision has been made. The clan of Ibom would depart. The morning of departure came with a sky heavy and grey, as though the heavens themselves mourned what was about to be left behind. Smoke rose from the last fires of Ibom, their embers smoldering like the memory of a home soon to be abandoned. Families gathered at the edge of the settlement, their belongings tied in raffia mats, gourds of water, baskets of dried cocoyam, heirlooms wrapped in clothes. Goats bleated nervously, chickens quacked in the wooden cages, and children clung to their mothers' wrappers. At the front stood Obot, spear in hand, his frame steady against the uncertainty that lay ahead. Beside him, men of fighting age carried shields and machetes, their eyes alert for whatever danger might come. The elders walked more slowly, leaning on their carved staffs, while the younger ones bore the burden of carrying loads. The path southward was not one of ease. It wound through thick forest where the air was heavy with dampness, and the cries of unseen animals echoed in the canopy above. The forest floor was treacherous, roots twisted like serpents, thorns tore at bare feet, and the damp soil slowed their march. At night, the people huddled close, their fires small and watchful, their ears straining against the distant roars of leopards and the cries of night birds that sounded like omens. Some children fell ill from exhaustion, their tiny breaths labored as mothers prayed silently over them. A few elders could not continue, their steps faltering with each mile. Yet the clan pressed on, driven by hunger, by desperation, and by Obot's voice reminding them that beyond the endless trees lay hope. One evening, as the sun bled red through the branches, the people halted by a broad river that cut across their path. The water shimmered like liquid bronze, deep and fast. The children cheered at the sight of water, but the elders' face grew grim. To cross meant risking lives, yet to remain meant despair. Obot stood at the riverbank, silent, his spear planted in the ground. The long road south had led them here, to the first great trial of their migration. The river stretched before them like a serpent, broad and restless, its currents tugging at fallen branches that dared its waters. The Ibom people stood at its banks in weary silence, knowing that the path south demanded they cross. Children clutched their mothers, and elders whispered prayers under their breath. To turn back was impossible. To remain was death. To cross was peril. Obot waded knee deep into the water, testing his strength. The current pulled hard, almost mocking him, but he did not flinch. Turning to the clan, he said, "This river is no enemy. It is only a test. If we cross with courage, it will carry our story forward." The younger men tied bundles of wood together, shaping crude rafts that creaked under weight. Women gathered calabashes, hollowed and sealed with pitch, to help keep children afloat. It was not the skill of seasoned river folks, but necessity forged wisdom in desperate hands. The crossing began at dawn. Families stepped into the current one after another, rafts bobbing, children strapped to their mothers' backs. goats bleating in panic. The river roared, swallowing some of the weaker bundles. But Obot and his warriors moved tirelessly, pulling those who struggled, holding the line together. Yet, not all were saved. One raft splintered midstream, and cries pierced the air as a young boy was swept away. His mother's wail echoed long after the river closed over him. Others, too weak to resist the current, disappeared beneath the brown waters, their name carried off like the whispers into the distance. When at last the surviving clansmen reached the far bank, their bodies were soaked, their spirits heavy with both relief and grief. Fires were lit, clothes spread to dry, and the dead were mourned with hushed songs. Beyond the river stretched the endless wall of forests, green, thick, and untamed. The people looked upon it with dread and wonder. Obot stood at the edge, spear raised, and declared, "We have crossed the water. Now we will carve a path through the heart of this forest. If it resists, we will endure. If it yields, we will build." The march into the great forest had begun. The forest beyond the river seemed endless, its canopy swallowing the sun and casting the paths into dim twilight. Each step was a battle. Machetes hacked at young stubborn vines. Insects stung bare flesh, and the cries of unseen animals haunted the weary travelers. Still, the people pressed on, guided by Obot's steady stride. After days of slow movement, they reached a narrow path carved by hunters long before. Here, the forest thinned slightly, allowing the people to move faster. Spirits lifted as they believed the worst was behind them. Mothers sang softly to their children, and men laughed in low voices, their hunger momentarily forgotten. But in the shadows, danger lurked. Without warning, a spear whistled through the air and struck one of the clansmen in his chest. He fell with a cry, and panic erupted. From both sides of the paths, figures burst forth, warriors painted in ash and red clay, their eyes fierce, their weapons gleaming. These were no spirits but men, guardians of their own land who saw Obot's people as intruders. Chaos spread like fire. The attackers struck swiftly, their war cries split in the air. Women clutched their children and ran for cover. Elders stumbled, crying out in fear. The Igbo men scrambled to defend their families with whatever they carried. Spears, machetes, even sharpened stick. Obot fought at the center, his spear flashing. He shouted commands, urging his people to form a circle around the weak and the young. Hold together, protect the bloodline. His voice cut through the fear like iron. The clash was brutal but brief. Though Obot's clan fought with desperation, the ambushers were skilled and familiar with the land. Several Igbo men fell, their blood darkening the forest floor. But Obot, rallying the strongest among them, drew forward with such ferocity that the attackers pulled back, dragging their dead and wounded into the forest. When the forest grew silent again, the damage was clear. Bodies lay still, families wept, and the taste of blood hung in the air. Yet they had survived. Obot kneeled beside the fallen and swore. Aloud, he said, "No trial shall break us. Each life lost will be remembered, and each step forward will honor their sacrifice." The journey had grown darker. The Ibom clan now knew they were not alone in these lands, and the road ahead would demand both courage and blood. The ambush left the Ibom clan shaking. The forest that once seemed merely hostile now felt haunted by the memory of blood. Mothers clutched their children tighter, elders muttered in sorrow, and the young men walked with eyes darting into trees, fearing another attack. At night, the campfires burned low, and silence ruled where once soft songs had steadied weary hearts. But Obot refused to let despair roof itself. He moved among his people like a man carrying more than his own burden. He helped dig shallow graves for the fallen, his hands blackened with soil. He comforted widows, reminding them that their husband's name would not be forgotten. And when children cried for hunger, he gave up his own share of food so that their little voices may live another day. One evening, as the people huddled in circle, Obot rose to speak. His frame was tall against the flicker of fire, his eyes catching the flame as though they carried their own light. "My brothers, my sisters," he began, his voice steady but fierce. "Today we weep, but tomorrow we must walk again. The forest does not weep for us. The land does not pity us. If we show weakness, these paths will consume us. But if we stand together, no force of men or beasts can scatter us." A murmur of strength stirred in the crowd. Their heads lifted slowly. Obot lifted his spear and stuck it into the ground before him. "This spear is not mine alone. It is the spear of Ibom, of the fathers and of our children yet unborn. Let it remind us that we are not wanderers lost, but founders of tomorrow." From that moment, his voice became law. Even the elders who once doubted him now deferred to his judgment. The people moved with greater resolve, carrying their grief as fuel for endurance. The journey was far from over, but Obot's courage had lit a fire in the hearts of his people. For the first time since leaving the ancestral home, the Ibom clan felt the stirring of hope that might yet carve a destiny in the unknown lands ahead. After weeks of pushing through dense forests, the Ibom clan stumbled upon a clearing that seemed touched by mercy. It was a rise of land, neither too steep nor too flat, overlooking a small valley where a stream glittered in the sunlight. The air was fresher here, the ground firm. The trees gave way to grass that swayed gently in the wind. For a people weary from hunger and fear, it felt like the breath of relief. Obot raised his hand, signaling the column to stop. He stood at the crest of the rise, scanning the land below. The stream was shallow and clean, fed by springs that sang over the rocks. The soil beneath his feet was dark and rich, hinting at fertility. Above all, the elevated ground gave them sight over the forest around, an advantage against surprise attacks. "This place," Obot said, his voice carrying to the gathered crowd, "shall be our resting hill. Here we will mend our wounds, bury our dead with honor, and draw strength for the road ahead." The people cheered faintly, though their voices were tired. They set to work immediately, clearing bushes and raising small shelters from branches and raffia. Fires were lit, and for the first time since leaving Ibom, smoke curled upward, not as a farewell, but as a promise of warmth. Women fetched waters from the stream, and hunters laid snares that soon brought small game to the pot. The scent of meat simmering in earthen pot carried through the camp, stirring hunger but also joy. That night, under a sky bright with stars, the people gathered. They sang softly, not mournful chants of the past weeks, but songs of survival. Drums were beating in low rhythm, and for a moment, the hill of rest felt like a sanctuary carved out of hardship. Yet Obot, sitting apart with his spear laid across his knees, did not allow himself to rest fully. His eyes roamed the darkness beyond the fires. He knew this peace was only a pause. The forest still held dangers, and other clans might see this hill not as sanctuary, but as prize. Still, for that night, his people slept with lighter hearts. For the first time since leaving their homeland, the Ibom clan dreamed not only of survival, but of the possibility of belonging again. The hill of rest had been meant as a purse, but as days turned into weeks, the Ibom clan began to see in it more than temporary refuge. The soil, when tilled, yielded easily beneath their hoes, rich with promise. The women planted the yam heads they had carried from their homeland, bearing them with care as though laying down their ancestors' blessings. Cassava stems, cocoyam, and melon seeds followed, each plot of earth whispering hope for the future. The stream at the valley's edge became their lifeline. Children fetched water in calabashes, their laughter ringing again as they splashed each other playfully. Hunters ventured deeper into the woods and returned with antelopes and wild birds, while women foraged for fruits, mushrooms, and healing herbs. Hunger had not vanished, but its sharpness dulled as spot filled more often, and stomachs no longer cried throughout the night. Obot walked among his people, noting each change. He saw men repairing huts into sturdier homes, women weaving mats and baskets, and children chasing one another without fear. His heart swelled with pride, but also caution. He knew too well that comfort could lure a people into forgetting that the journey is not yet complete. One evening, the elders gathered with Obot at the center of the camp. Elder Nkanga, who had once resisted leaving Ibom, spoke with softened tone. This land has embraced us. Perhaps it is here that we are meant to stay. The yams will grow, the stream will sustain, and our children will have a place to call their own. Murmurs of agreement spread. Some nodded eagerly, weary of wandering and eager to root themselves. Others cast doubtful glances at Obot, waiting his words. Obot listened but did not rush to answer. At last he said, "The earth has given us a gift and we must cherish it. But remember, peace in one season does not promise peace in the next. We are strangers still. Let us farm, let us live, but let us never forget that this hill may not have been tested." His word tempered their joy with wisdom. Still, as the fires burned that night and the first green shoots pushed through the soil, the Ibom clan allowed themselves to believe, however briefly, that the hill of rest might grow into a home. The moon stormed and the hill of rest bore fruits. The yam mounds rose proudly from the dark earth, their leaves lush and sprawling. Cocoyam and cassava thrived. The hunter's snares returned with heavier catches. The stream ran full through the rains, blessing the fields with water. For the first time since their exodus from Ibom, the clan no longer counted days by hunger, but by the fullness of their barns. When the harvest season came, Obot declared a feast. "Let us eat together, for we have endured together," he said. His voice carried hope. Word spread quickly, and soon the hill of rest buzzed with preparations. Women pounded yam in large mortars, their rhythmic beats echoing across the settlement. Men roasted antelope and bushmeat over open fires. Calabashes of palm wine were brought forth, their sweet smell filling the air. Children, their bellies round with health, ran freely between the compounds, carrying laughter where once silence had reigned. That evening, the people gathered in a great circle. Drums thundered, flutes sang, and dancers stepped in time, their feet striking the earth as though it claimed it as its own. Elders told stories of Ibom, reminded the young of the land they had left and the strength it had taken to survive the journey. Every face glowed with firelight, every heart swelled with relief and pride. But beneath the joy, shadows stirred. Some whispered that Ubot's word had become too strong, that even the elders now bowed before him. A few men, once proud in Ibom, now felt themselves small beneath his rising stature. This envy was masked behind smiles, but it smoldered in silence. As drums rose into the night, Obot sat among his people, his eyes steady, his heart cautious. He too felt the shift in the air. Prosperity had given them rest, but it had also awakened ambition. And ambition, like fire, could warm a home or burn it to ashes. The feast of new beginning had bound the people together, yet unseen in the crowd, seeds of division has been sown. The hill of rest thrived, but prosperity does not go unnoticed. Beyond the forests and streams, other clans watched with sharp eyes. The Ibom people, once wanderers, now stood rooted in fertile soil. their yam barns swelling and their fires burning brightly at night. To neighbors who had long claimed dominance over this land, the rise of Obot's clan was an insult, a threat to the balance of power. One dawn, scouts returned breathless with troubling news. Warriors from the Edem clan marched near. They reported. Their drums beat along the valley paths. They saw the hill of rest as theirs, stolen by strangers. Fear rippled through the settlement. Mothers clutched their children, and the elders gathered, their voices low and heavy. Some urged flight, reminding all of the blood spilled during the ambush weeks before. We cannot withstand another war, one muttered. Others argued for tribute. Perhaps gift of yams and palm wine might appease the Edem. But Obot stood firm. His voice cut through the quarrel. We fled once when famine drove us. We cannot flee again when life has only begun to bloom. If the Edem seek to drive us away, then let them meet us as men. This land does not belong to fear. It belongs to those willing to defend it. Under his commands, preparation began. Spears were sharpened, shields bound with fresh leather. The warriors training in the clearing until their shouts echoed through the trees. Women gathered stones to haul if battles reached the camp, while the elders blessed the young with words of encouragement. At night, the drums of the Edem carried across the valley, a steady drum of challenge. The Ibom clan listened in silence, hearts pounding with dread and resolve. For Obot, this was no longer just about food or rest. It was about destiny. To hold the hill of rest, his people would have to prove they were no longer wanderers, but a clan worthy of land, blood, and name. The challenge had been cast. The hill of rest would either stand or fall by the strength of its defenders.